Welcome back to Show Me the Nuggets. Eduardo here from the team at Digital Triggers. Thanks for tuning in. At the end of each podcast interview, Joe has this question for all of our expert guests. What's the one book that's made the biggest impact on your business? We've had a ton of great answers to this question, from the typical to the unexpected. The book recommendations have been awesome and are really worth picking up. But more than that, learning about what these world-class entrepreneurs took away from these books and the reasons why they've been so impactful to their businesses has been super valuable. We got a couple of great examples of this in today's episode, featuring past interviews with Daniel Daines-Hutt, Matthew Woodward, Jonathan Kiekbusch, Todd Brown, and Maxwell Finn. Here we go.
Welcome to Show Me the Nuggets, where each week Joe chats with world-class entrepreneurs to find out the key principles, strategies, and processes that lie behind their outstanding achievements. Now, your host, the no-bullshit serial entrepreneur, Joe Troyer.
Well, I know you always ask for a book recommendation, right? And
Yeah.
I was trying to there's so many books, but I would say Scientific Advertising, which is like a really simplified version of learning direct response. Read that book, and if you learn that, you'll learn why people do the things they do and how to get them to do an action, how to measure that result, and then you can apply it to your content, to your emails, to your ads, to your sales page and stuff like that. The more you understand your audience, the easier it is to make a product that they want and to sell it. You know, like it's not just because it does this thing. Like our sales page has changed 4 times. Same product, but like understanding the angle better of what the audience needs and then improving it from there. So yeah, I would recommend reading that book. Super cheap. I think you can even get it on PDF for free now. And then understanding your audience, the more time you spend there, as crazy as those people are, you know, like the better you'll understand and the easier your job will be.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. I always talk about just being a curious prospect, right? And that if you're interested in going into a vertical, like you should be having conversations with that niche all the time. And it doesn't matter how you get the conversation started. If you got to ask for a favor, an introduction to somebody else, like it doesn't matter, but you should be very, very curious and you got to know them. So that book recommendation is very timely. And I think it also ties in very well with what we talked about today. So thank you very, very, very much for that. Daniel, as you look at your businesses and you look at your success, is that the one book that you think that has made the biggest impact on your business? Not like, you know, it was great, but I didn't do anything with it. Obviously, you took that book and you applied it, but I feel like there's so many books that people toss around that are like, yeah, that was a fantastic book. It's a must read. And then you look at their business and their life and they didn't apply anything from it.
So that was probably the biggest one that helped me understand my audience. It's weird because it's like what book at different stages in your journey. I would say like the biggest one for me is a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way, which is about stoicism and learning how to deal with difficult situations, but also how to deal with success. Because like at one point we were a small business and then we were like a huge business. And then, you know, we didn't always handle it well and things like that. My weight, I put on like 30 kgs, stuff like this, you know, because you're trying to do like 14-hour days and 3 Red Bulls and things. So reading that and helping me reset my brain. Now, like, you know, we get links by huge companies, which is great. We also get people talking smack to us in Facebook ads, which is fine. Both things I hold in equal regard in that it's, you know, it's cool. I can focus on the process and just keep doing the thing. So that book, he's got a 3rd one coming out, I think, called Stillness is the Key. But they're like those books that he did there about stoicism, so helpful as an entrepreneur, because sometimes, you know, we don't always have people to talk to, or, you know, sometimes you can be super successful and then go batshit crazy, you know, and spend money everywhere or do something stupid, you know. But a
lot of people ask, like, what are your favorite 3 books? Which I think is great. I'm a reader. I like books, but I like practical books. There's a lot of books that I read that I'm like, yeah, that's great, but it wasn't very practical. Like I read it, I thought it was a good book and it made me think, but it had no impact on my business. Okay. And it really had no impact on my life either. And so I like to ask from like a practical standpoint. When you look at your business, when you look at your blog, you look at your agency, what's the one book that you think you could point to and say, this is the one book that made all the difference?
The book that I've read the most times and I've revisited many times, and each time I revisited took other lessons that each time I've reread it, I've been like, oh yeah, I've been using that. I was like, yeah, that's where that came from. Was Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, the classic,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Absolute classic. And that's really been the one that every time I read it, I'm like, yeah, cool, okay, and it gives me a different direction. It's like it's like there's a new series of the book every time, but it's the same book. It's not actually a new series. It's just my life's moved on to a different season, and with new learnings,
100%.
everything else, and that changes the way that I interpret the lessons and everything else. That book's greatly rooted in essentially you taking control and deciding where you want to be or what you want to do, and it just happens. And it does seem to be that's how a lot of things have come about in my life. So that would be the book. Yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. I appreciate that. And it's funny you saying that at the end, like just you grasping control and deciding where you want to go, like that as a takeaway. When you said that, I think my favorite books are that takeaway, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I think about my favorite books and books that I've read, that's definitely a common thread and a common core. And it's the ultimate reinforcement to always be reading those types of books because it keeps you thinking in that manner. And I would see why Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich would be that way, but also why you keep reading it and it would be kind of new lessons to take away as your life changes.
Yeah, it basically boils down as, look, when you get in your car, you decide where you're going to go and you drive there. Same thing. Literally, success is the same thing. Get in your car, decide where you want to go and drive there. That's it. People make it a lot more complicated. Granted, you might be driving there and there's a tree in the road and you can't get past, but just take a different route. I mean, we've got sat nav, that's it. Like, decide where you want to go and go there. That's it. That's what most books boil down to, right? Taking control of that mindset and understanding that you do have that decision-making ability in your life. You do. Just decide, and if you want it, everything will gravitate towards that. But you got to decide where you're going first before you can start gravitating towards it. And that's what.
And I think
come down to.
I think just spending time having that conversation with yourself often, so that you don't forget where you're going and why, right? Yep. And plans change, your priorities change, where you're going changes, but often we just kind of head down sprinting and we look up and we're like, whoa, how the hell did I just get here? Right? Like you're driving down the road, you're thinking, and you're like, I just missed my turn. Shit.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time in life, and I think it happens way too often because we forget to look up.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Very similar to what people do a lot on podcasts. I like to ask for a book recommendation, but we do things a little bit different here at Digital Triggers and Show Me the Nuggets. So ultimately what we're looking for is, what's the one book, when you look at your business or businesses, has actually made the biggest impact on the way that you do business? Not like it was great mindset wise, but nothing changed in the business, or it was great, it got me to take responsibility, but nothing changed in the business. Like, what's the one book that has made the biggest actual impact on your business?
Okay. Oh man, it's really a tough one. I think that the biggest shift in my business came when I read a book called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. It changed my perspective of my role within the business and what I could do to enable the people that worked with me to reach their full potential, which is so, so powerful.
That's awesome. Can you expand on that just a little more?
Sure. So
that was brilliant. And the book has been recommended on the podcast before.
That's
but
awesome.
I like to get everybody's that comes on. I like to really get everybody's outlook on the book and why they think it made such an impact. And so that was a great explanation, but could you take it kind of one step further, if you will?
Yeah, of course. So in Leaders Eat Last, Simon Sinek covers partially the thoughts of the infinite game strategy, right? So finite and infinite games. And he kind of talks a little bit about, like how you build teams that can really reach their full potential. And the way to achieve that, and this is super paraphrased, is by the leader working for the team and the team serving the customer. And so instead of standing on a pedestal and being the boss and being the CEO, you're actually doing what you can to enable people. And what it triggered in me is the realization that the ROI and the business and all of that is fantastic, but really it comes second to the people that make it all happen. And once you start treating people with, and this is super important, empathy, that you're able to actually have a good time, enjoy what you're doing, have your team have a good time, have them enjoy what they're doing, and actually live a happy and fulfilled life. And it led to small tweaks of how we do things. So, some of the geekier stuff, we switched all of our tables to sit-stand desks. We allowed writers and like academic staff to work just 7 hours instead of 8, because we noticed that there was a huge drop off after the 7th hour, because it's really hard to just analyze a lot of content or write a lot of content. We started having flexible working hours. So now the office is open from 6 in the morning until 7 at night, and people show up when they need to show up, and everybody gets stuff done, and they have the understanding that we all need to show up when we need to show up. So when Black Friday hits and SEO Butler absolutely gets hammered, people come in on Saturday, you know what I mean? And we order pizza and we have a party and we get stuff done. But for me, as the business owner, one of the things that became very important through this book is wanting to understand how people are doing past the shallow sort of top level stuff of I'm dragging my sorry ass to work and I'm surviving through the day, and actually caring how they are, how are their relationships at home going, right? How are they doing financially? Is everything okay? Do they need some help? And by doing so, starting to find out different issues or things that we as a business could do to enable those people to do better. And it's actually quite easy to achieve this in such a small business, because all you have to do is actually care. And it's a lot harder when you have 500 people or 1,000 people, and you need to have all these HR managers and then find the ones that actually do care, etc. But in a small business like ours, it really doesn't cost anything to just take one of your staff and go to have lunch or have coffee and just go hey man, how are you? And that is just all the difference. I really recommend that book. Another book that I recommend, and I know I'm breaking the rules here, is the Thank You Economy by Gary Vee. I think it's one of his better books, and it's actually quite old now, and it's hilarious to read today because he predicts a lot of the things that are happening in social media and in tech in this book. And so reading it today is kind of hilarious because it makes it sound like he knows what the future holds.
That's awesome. I'll definitely have to check out that book, man. You have delivered so much gold. I just want to thank you first and foremost. And then want to wrap up with one more question, man. Instead of asking you to recommend 3 books, like I feel like every podcast does, I'd love to ask you a little bit of a twist on that question. What's the one book that when you look at your business has made the biggest actual impact? Not like, oh, it changed my mindset a little bit, but you look at your business and you're like, man, this one thing, right, is the most practical thing that I got.
Oh my gosh. I'm under a lot of pressure here, Joe. Let me think for 1 second. It's tough. I'm gonna give an answer, but then I'm gonna give a second answer. So the answer really for me, breakthrough advertising was a complete game changer. It really, like I said, complete game changer. But I'm gonna give an oddball recommendation that I haven't given in a while. There's a book by Brian Tracy. I believe it's just called Goals. And for me, it was a game changer. It's a book that I read not every year, but probably every other year for sure. It just helped me to really stop thinking small and stop playing small and stop settling. For me, it's a very tactical book, tactical on goal setting, like tactical on thinking about your goals and whatnot. And it's just a great book. If you've ever found yourself if you ever feel like at any point where you're just playing below your potential, like that you feel like there's more for you, you can't maybe put your finger on it, but you just feel like there's more for you and you don't understand why you're not grabbing the bull by the horns. That's a great book to really read and ponder, man.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to wrap this thing up by asking one question that gets asked on podcasts a lot, but I take a little slight tilt with it. So instead of asking you to recommend your 3 favorite books, I always ask at the end of podcasts, like, what's the one book where if you look at your business, you can say this has had the biggest impact on my business? Not like this was a great book and there's a bunch of theory that I liked and I remember that, but when you look at your business, like what's the 1 or 2 books that's made the biggest actual impact?
Yeah. So, I looked at this question when you sent it over, and, the answer I give you may not like, but it's going to be the answer. So what I would say is I honestly can't pick. There's not a single book because I like to read about so many different things. Like I think a lot of people pick like a very specific business book, right? A Jim Collins book or something like that. Harvard Business Review type book. And, but then I love history. D-Day is one of my favorite books about Normandy. Like I'm a big history buff, a big World War II buff. So instead, I would say like from an author perspective, I think one author has probably hasn't driven my business world, but has had probably the greatest impact on the way I think about things. And that's Malcolm Gladwell. I think like every book Malcolm Gladwell puts out, and his newest one just came out, Talking to Strangers, which I read in like 2 days. It was one of his best. I absolutely loved it. Are just so incredibly well written and entertaining, right? So from Tipping Point all the way to Talking to Strangers, like he's able to educate through entertainment, right? So he has a clear thesis through each of his books, and like Talking to Strangers is all about why us as humans, despite we're all humans, so terrible at talking to people we don't know, essentially, right? Judging people we don't know. It talks about, Bernie Madoff. It talks about Amanda Knox. It talks about all these big events that have happened where it showcases that. But it teaches that central thesis through really engaging stories. And I think from a marketing perspective, the way we've grown our agency, being able to entertain and engage is like the most effective way to sell, right? If you can get somebody's attention and you can suck them in and get them hooked, you can really sell, right? And so for Malcolm Gladwell, it's like him selling his thesis, his viewpoint. And I think that's something we've done with a lot of our businesses. So yeah, I would say from an author perspective, his books have probably entertained, engaged, and educated me the most throughout my career.
Love it.
Thanks for tuning in and showing me the nuggets. If you've been enjoying the podcast and find our content helpful, please visit our Apple Podcast page, hit the subscribe button, and leave us a review. Joe and the whole team have been working hard to bring more value to the show. Your feedback will go a long way in helping us make the show better and reach a wider audience.